Welcome to another STARS webinar. I am David Earn, Director of Programs and Communication at STARS. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Today we talk with Dr. Kazuo YANO about technology and happiness. Kazuo is Fellow of Hitachi and CEO of Happiness Planet. He previously served as Corporate Chief Scientist of Hitachi, and he is particularly known for his pioneering works in the development of the world's first room temperature single electron memories. Subsequently, Kazuo has pioneered the measurement and analysis of social big data. He and his co-workers have succeeded in quantifying the happiness of people from unconscious physical motion and founded Happiness Planet in 2020 to enhance happiness and psychological capital through technologies. Kazuo has applied for over 350 patents, and his papers have over 2,500 citations. His book, The Invisible Hand of Data, was nominated as one of the top 10 business books in Japan in 2014. Kazuo is a fellow of the IEEE, the world's largest technical professional organization for the advancement of technology, and he is also a member of the STARS Scientific Board. Among many other awards, Kazuo received the IEEE Frederick Phillips Award for his leadership in the development of human-centric IoT technology. Good evening to you, Kazuo. I know it is Friday evening in Tokyo, and instead of heading into the weekend, you are here with us. So welcome and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Good morning. This is good evening. Yeah.
We now have 30 minutes to discuss with Kazuo. I will take the privilege to ask the first couple questions. In the meantime, if you have any questions for Kazuo, please use the Q&A feature below to type in your question. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. And let's start with the big question. Will artificial intelligence make us happier? What is your view on this?
Yeah. Human being has made a lot of technologies and tools, and that has made us amplified our capability, starting from fire or any automobiles and computers, and artificial intelligence and data will allow us to amplify our capability and integrate with our capability. And so it's not separated from our human being, because we are very we are integrated with the technology. That's what human being is.
Let's dig a little bit deeper to better understand how AI and happiness is actually connected. So as a scientist, you are a pioneer in the measurement and analysis of social big data. And as founder and CEO of Happiness Planet, you also make quantifying happiness a business. Can you walk us through it? How do you define happiness, and how do you quantify the happiness of people based on social big data?
Yeah. The first of all, why we focus on happiness? Because happiness is the highest value of any human being and society. And also, in this very rapidly changing world, we need to positively adapt to the changes. Such a positive energy to adapt to the changes is driven by our happiness. And happiness is the psychological capital, or fuel to cope with the changes. And of course, there are many meanings. There are a lot of facets of the definition of happiness. One aspect is means to be happy, something like playing instruments or having good meals, or hug with your boyfriends and girlfriends, and those are means to be happy. There are much wide variety of means to be happy that depends on individuals, culture, time, and country, culture, and so any activity can be a means to be happy. And so it's diversified and depending on individuals. Another aspect of the happiness is the change we experience after we get the experience called happiness, or the condition related to happiness. The change occurs in our body as a biochemical reaction in our blood vessel or blood itself or hormones or muscle relaxation and the contraction and many other, of course, a neural circuitry. Many of the unconscious positive or negative feedback, that's kind of a part of a homeostasis. That's kind of a positive negative feedback needed for our human being to survive in this changing earth or environment. And that's driven by a very universal mechanism driven by our DNA, and so quite universal. That's very different from the means to be happy is quite diversified and case dependent. But so what we have tried to do is to measure those biochemical reactions or something related to biochemical reactions. That's quite universal. Unfortunately, many of them are occurring in our body. So it is quite difficult to measure from outside. But physical motion driven by the muscle motion can be, measurable by out from outside. Especially, even billions of people have smartphone. Smartphone has accelerometer. That's motion sensing capability. Everyone on the earth, many of them on the earth already have, allows us to capture the unconscious physical motion. And actually, I started quantifying physical motion of myself March 16th, year 2006. Since then, maybe a couple days from now, I've been measuring my wrist motion in the last full 15 years, 24 hours, and many others. And we have collected more than 10 million motion, 10 million days of motion from much variety of people. Very different organization, very different occupation, and so on. And we also captured questionnaire results related to happiness. And as some questionnaires, for example, we use CSD, that's kind of related to happiness. And we correlated, we analyzed such a big data and to quantify the very universal features found in happy people or unhappy people. And there are many features related to, especially communication pattern and, for example, nonverbal cues of the happy people are much richer than unhappy people, or the link among people is much more flat rather than dominated by very limited person. That's frequently found in unhappy organization or group of people. We tried to build very universal measure of the happy people, happy person, and by analyzing that big data, we have discovered such a pattern how we do it. Motion pattern captured by acceleration. We label the motion, for example, of every 10 minutes, 10 seconds, stopping or moving is labeled by 0 or 1. In this way, if we collect, for example, 3 hours of physical motion data, gives us a sequence of 1 or 0. And actually, we analyze such a 1-0 code as a kind of a DNA of our behaviors, and carefully analyzing by using artificial intelligence. Happy people has a very universal secret pattern of 1 and 0, and unhappy people shows very secret and consistent pattern of 1 and 0 sequence. That's might be called happy sequence or unhappy sequence of 1 and 0 every 10 seconds. And that's related with the probability of changing successive, sustained 1, changing from 1 to 0. That transition from 1 to 0, timing of the 1 to 0 is related to the happiness of people, surprisingly. Another university professor found such a 1 and 0 transition pattern obeys a very universal law of all human beings, but more widely, that formula is also found exactly the same equation in mouse. So that's 1 and 0 sequence pattern is very universal and unconscious sequence that we cannot intentionally modify or raise or fake. And so we analyze that pattern. Also, something very important and interesting observation has been found. That is, for example, questionnaire. This person is very happy people, but we capture also, we measure whom the person is communicating with. Happy person sometimes have very unhappy people to communicate with. That's, I suppose, the person gets happy at the sacrifice of the people around. And we found very consistently some percentage of people get happy at the sacrifice of others. Sometimes maybe, giving stressful work to others and get stress-free, or maybe power harassment or something like that to push something to around and get happy himself or herself. And that cannot be captured by individual level happiness questionnaire. So our sequence captures good happiness. That means happy individual also accompanied by happy people around. And that's what we call social happiness index. And also we found many organizations such as call center, store, development project, people who experience such a happy signal or sequence are more productive. And so in that way, we have by use, and fortunately, smartphone has an accelerometer inside, so we can get that sequence just downloading the app, our app, on your smartphone, and put that smartphone 3 hours in a pocket and quantify such a social happiness index. And I think this is a very important step. Without, weight measure, you cannot get diet program. You cannot, recording instrument, 100-meter, running or athlete cannot make the record better. So the organization or company needs something like that, objective measure of good organization or bad organization, And I hope our technology allows us to capture such a very objective measure of happy and good organization and unhappy and bad organization. And of course, that is related with the productivity of the organization.
Mm. We have a comment and a question from STARS alumnus Urs Brutsch, owner of UB Services, that ties into what you just said. Is maybe a question to clarify.
Yeah.
He writes, in my understanding, how happy we feel is largely controlled by our hormones, especially the so-called happiness hormones. Their effects influence our psychological and physical well-being and are therefore often referred to as endogenous drugs. As ambassadors in our body, they transmit nerve impulses to the brain via the synapses, and they are the basis of every emotion, every thought, and every movement. I understand that our body produces several different happiness hormones, and in spring we have loads of those happiness hormones in our bodies, just because having more light and moving outside creates more good mood hormones and spring fever. So how are these external influencing factors taken into account? Do they play any role for your technology?
You mean, yeah, of course. And our finding, our discovery shows that very strong influence of the good relationship with others. As I said, a very equalized relationship and flat link with others, and also equalized turn taking in the communication, and 5 minutes, 10 minutes, very short improvised communication with others. And those are very good, the sign of a good relationship. And that's kind of good relationship and trustful relationship, or has a very strong influence on the happiness of the people. And but unlike the hormones, we put much more emphasis. The hormones is much more driven by instantaneous, very short-term changes. But we put more emphasis in the midterm, sustainable happiness. That's related, but not directly represented by such a very short-term physiological signals.
The next question comes from STARS alumna Nicole Schad. She's the Deputy Head Division R&I at the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation. She's asking, has this study been done on the basis of data only or also in interviews with people? And do you see any patterns in the cultural context, for instance, a difference between Japan and other countries?
Our study has based on the data of Japanese subjects, quite wide variety of, and the data itself has some overseas data, and we have done many experiments also in the overseas countries. The physiological aspect of the signals are quite universal. That's our understanding. As I said, because the motion pattern or the sequence pattern of the human being is exactly the same with those of the mouse. And the signal or features we are focusing on, are using for our social happiness index is such a very universal good pattern of a kind of an animal. So the index itself is quite universal, and it doesn't depend on other cultures or many other things. But of course, means to be happy, means to make happiness is quite diversified, even in the same country, or individual has different pattern. That universal measure of the social happiness index will not deny any diversified means to be happy.
We have another question from STARS alumnus Pascal Yaki. He's the head of operations engineering at Swisscom. He's asking, have you ever correlated corporate happiness with KPIs like customer satisfaction, for instance? And are there good examples of companies using this already on a regular basis?
Yeah, we started our company Happiness Planet about six months ago, and already about 10 companies have already have started use our technology and quite regular base. And we haven't checked the correlation with the customer satisfaction, but we have analyzed many other correlation between our index with, for example, order receiving rate of our outbound call center, quite good relationship, or retention of a call center. So retention rate, happy people will not leave the company, and also many other productivity index. For example, Hitachi have used, for example, 600 sales employee of Hitachi Group who uses this kind of app shows the people who have higher social happiness index have higher sales rate, and so many business KPIs are quite related with the happiness, and that's not only our observation. Many other positive organizational behavior science and positive psychology academic work has revealed that happy people are more productive and creative.
The next question comes from Andreas Kempf. He's also a STARS alumnus and senior vice president of Carl Zeiss AG. He's asking, is constant happiness really an aspiration? Is being unhappy not just the normal state of humans as being happy is? From a pure substance perspective, would drugs not do the same job, like firing on the synapses? And he's adding an important disclaimer. He does not want to promote the consumption of drugs.
So is a question,
what? Wouldn't drugs have the same effect in the end if they fire on the synapses to make people happier?
I don't think so. Drug is a very so Professor Sonia Lyubomirsky have shown there are three elements of happiness. Those three are different in time domain. One domain of happiness is very consistent and very difficult to change after you get adult. It's mostly driven by genes or inheritance. The second element is something driven by environment. For example, if you are praised or get bonus or lottery win, those good environment changes will give you a very temporary happiness, but it will return to the baseline in a very short time. And drug, as far as the drug is effective, you may be happy, but that's not a sustainable one. Something very important is pursue sustainable happiness. And sustainable happiness is clarified that is a kind of a skill. So we can get skill of becoming happiness. And there are 4 elements of happiness skill, and that is hope, efficacy, resilience, optimism, and all those 4. For example, so finding a path to the future, that's hope, and make action even under uncertain conditions, that's efficacy. And even at difficult times, you confront the difficulties, that's resilience. And in a complicated situations, you can make positive story, that's optimism. That's collectively known hero within, HERO, hope, efficacy, resilience, optimism, and also collectively known psychological capital. And also the relationship is very essence of the happiness, means making others hero, making others psychological capital enhanced. Those good relationship is the essence of a good, happy, productive organization. Okay.
We're already running out of time, but I'd like to take 2 more questions from the audience. First, a question from Peter Hinder. He's the chairman and CEO of Abifor and a friend of STARS. He's asking you, did you collect any conclusions on why many people follow paradigms that they think are making them happier, like, for instance, pursuing financial success, despite the fact that they actually heavily compromise on their happiness?
Yeah, because the society is driving that kind of directions, especially shareholder capitalism has driven executives of the companies to pursue profit. Even pursuing something other than profit is unethical. That kind of belief has quite prevailing in the last couple of decades. But now, many people have doubts on those things, especially if we seriously think about human being and our constraint to becoming happy. There are many other views on a good organization, good company. And now is the time to think about new way of think about what is a good company, good economy.
Seong-Gwan Lim, former president of GIC and professor at Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore. He's asking you whether you find that you can change the happiness baseline through a training course or a change of work environment or probably a living environment, or is the baseline just a natural part of a person's makeup?
Yeah, we have all, I didn't have much time to explain that. Actually, there are many means to make people happy, and simply measure gives organization and management. They find out what is effective for making happy organization, happy company. And our app also has another aspect, another facets of the functionality, which allows employees to be happy, to have more psychological capital, to have good relationship with our daily usage of the happiness, especially habit, everyday habit or ritual is very important. Very 1 minute positive ritual every morning, driven by our app, has a very tremendous impact on the happiness of employees. Actually, we have tested our app, more than 4,000 people, 83 companies, and just 3 weeks of 1 minute positive ritual driven by our app gives 33% better psychological capital just 3 weeks. And that is related based on Fred Luthan's textbook on the relationship with psychological capital and earning profit, operating profit. That means 10%. That is corresponding to 10% operating profit improvement. There are many ways, but very simple. And we do not need surgery. 1 minute positive ritual has a very profound impact.
We have to come to a close, and I would like to end on a personal note. Today we talked a lot about happiness and technology. What makes you happy personally as a scientist and business leader?
My happiness is to make people and society happy and make many companies around the world happy place to work.
With that, I would like to thank you very much, Kazuo, for taking your time and for sharing your insights with us. Thank you, Kazuo.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would also like to thank all our alumni who participated in this webinar. In the Next Stars webinar on the 26th of March, we talk with Dr. Michael Barbalas, former president of the American Chamber of Commerce in China, about what foreign companies should do to be successful in China in 2021. I hope to see you there. In the meantime, take care and stay healthy. Thank you and goodbye.